Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As you're coming in, I do need to do a little bit of legal housekeeping. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars, such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting, are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. Well, we are thrilled to bring you today's educational presentation. Attendees are muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions using the chat box, and the presenter will answer those queries during or after the webinar today as appropriate. We do have a question and answer period at the end of the webinar. If you ask a question in the chat box and we're not able to get to it, go ahead and leave your contact information. We'll make sure someone reaches out to you after today's event to make sure that's addressed. We want this experience to be as educational as possible. So again, please don't hesitate to ask for a clarification or expansion of the material. Well, I'd love to introduce you to today's speaker. Sydney Zeiker joined Crime Stoppers of Houston in 2018 and serves as the organization's manager of the Safe Community Program, director of the Safe Community Institute. It looks like that was changed. Sydney uses prevention and awareness programs to educate students ages kindergarten through high school, school administration staff, and community members throughout the greater Houston area with the educational programs. She also speaks nationally, and we're really excited to have her join us today. And Sydney, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the time to you.
Thank you so much, Marche, for that introduction. And yes, I am the director of our Safe Community Institute here at Crime Stoppers of Houston. And simply what that means is that I am in charge of overseeing all of our adult programming. And so I'm really excited to talk to you today. I'm going to give you just briefly a tiny bit of background information about Crime Stoppers, and then we'll jump right into our presentation about cyber safety. First and foremost, I have to brag on my institute a little bit. We launched as an institute in January, so this is a new institute. However, the Safe Community Institute is simply a place to house 4 of our programs that we've had for a long time. So our Safe Community program is basically what we're doing right now, any form of our education. And then we have victim services program that really focuses on direct services to victims and helping to advocate for their rights. We have a podcast that's called The Balanced Voice, which I will mention a couple times because there's some good resources that we provide throughout that podcast, throughout our years of episodes there. And then we have a research center. Our research center is our most newly established program. And the purpose of the research center is to provide really clear and concise data about crime trends and public safety issues in a way that the community can easily digest. And so there's a lot of new things coming with that. So Crime Stoppers is a nonprofit organization, and therefore we're funded by all kinds of lovely people, but T-Mobile is the person who makes the entity that makes all of our cyber safety education possible. And they have several resources that they've created and provided to the public generally as well. One is that they will help you put all the best safety tools on your devices for free. If you just walk into a T-Mobile store, they will help do that for free, which is a really lovely service that they provide. These are the rest of our sponsors, so thank you to them. Now this is our mission. Our mission is to solve and prevent serious crime. And we're a unique organization in that we have multiple different layers of our organization that help us kind of look at public safety in an all-encompassing manner. There are actually 1,700 Crime Stoppers organizations in 32 different countries across the world. But most of the other Crime Stoppers organizations are solely a tip line. Our tip line is what we are founded on. It is a place that you can call and anonymously report primarily felony crimes, and remain anonymous. And then you can be eligible for an up to $5,000 cash reward. But our lovely CEO, Rania Mankarios, when she took over the organization in 2013, she looked at that solve and prevent component and really looked at what does it mean to prevent a crime. And she came up with the idea of our Safe School Institute and now our Safe Community Institute, which are our one-stop shop for all things public safety education. And they're just kind of based on age. So school is for people ages pre-K through 12th grade. Community is for basically everybody else. And so that is how we have all of these educational presentations that we provide to the community and really across the nation on a regular ongoing basis. Between the two institutes, we have roughly 40 presentations that we provide. So if you ever need a resource, or you need education on something, we have presentations like this, interactive presentations, but also tons and tons of printed resources about every kind of public safety issue under the sun. So I'm going to kind of pop through some of these and go straight into our cyber safety education presentation. And we're going to try to focus on a bunch of different populations today. I'm going to try to help with some education on how you can create a safe internet environment for your student, your young people, but also for yourself. I think that a misconception that we have about the internet is that it's only dangerous to young people. And really, that's not the case at all. Even if we think about, some of the documentaries that have come out recently, I think of things like Social Dilemma on Netflix. It really shows or reveals a lot of the effect of the internet, and particularly social media, on our culture at large, on our lives at large. And so I'm going to try to integrate kind of all kinds of different age groups here. But if you have questions at all, remember, just pop them in that chat and I'll make sure to get to them and answer any specific questions that you have, because I want this to be the most helpful to you, your family. So let's jump in. Regardless of the age of people that we're talking to, we like to cover kind of these 5 topics within our presentations. Of course, the way we talk to a preschooler is going to be different than the way that we talk to an adult or even a high schooler. But really, it's important to remember or think of the internet in these 5 buckets. So first of all, we have to remind ourselves and our kids that the internet is a shared space. What do I mean by that? Well, we actually share the same internet with toddlers, with high schoolers, with other adults that are just using it for similar things as we are, maybe for education, maybe for socialization, maybe for work, whatever. But we also share it with criminals and with predators who are trying to harm us in some way. And that's really important to remember. It's important to remember that there are people who spend the same amount of time that you would spend at your full-time job. They spend that amount of time trying to figure out how to manipulate, how to harm us, how to capitalize on our vulnerabilities. And I don't say that to scare you. I don't want any of this presentation to scare you, but I want you to be aware that that is the case. Oftentimes when we're talking to young people, this is something that is hard to connect with them. It's like almost something that they know, but it just seems like a distant possibility that someone would be trying to harm them, but it's hard to connect emotionally with them or connect in a realistic way with them. What we found is that it's really important to talk about this on an ongoing basis, to remind people regularly, hey, the internet is basically just throwing the door wide open to any and all kinds of people. Okay. This brings me to the next point. The internet is not private. Okay. No matter how much or how many safeguards we put in place, there are still ways for people to find your information. So I'm going to kind of use social media as a basis for this. Think about it. There are such things as private social media accounts. And what that means is that you have implemented a setting on your account that makes it such that you feel like you can control who can view your content and who cannot. Someone has to send you a friend request, quote unquote. And you have to say, yes, you're allowed to see my content. While that is an added level of security than having a public account where just anyone that has the internet can see your content, it still doesn't mean that all of your information is private, safe, secure, anything like that. What could happen? First of all, in the world of screenshots or screen records, anyone that you've allowed to follow you can take a little snapshot of what's going on your screen and share that out, email it out, post it somewhere else, share it to someone else. And so that's one way that your information can be shared. The next thing is that all of these websites, platforms, apps, video games, anything internet related, those companies are gathering information about us. They're storing our content. They're storing our data. And so even if you were to post something on social media and then decide you don't want that out there for the world to see anymore and you delete it, doesn't mean that it's actually deleted. It's still saved on a server somewhere and it is recoverable. In the world of Crime Stoppers, we see this happen when we're looking at criminal cases, right? Someone who has engaged in some kind of criminal activity will delete content because they think that it could incriminate them. And they think once it's deleted, it's gone. But then they'll go to trial or it'll be examined in a case and they're shocked. How did the parties get my information? How did they find those posts that I thought I deleted? It's because it's stored on a server and it can be recovered. Okay, so just keep those things in mind, even talking through that with young people. There are apps that have disappearing content, like Snapchat, where the whole point of the app is to send something that will only be on a device for a few seconds and then disappear. People really think once I send this image and it disappears from someone else's device, it's gone forever. And that is not the case at all. So that brings me to the permanency of the internet. We see the permanency of the internet affect people of all ages. Okay. We see, I like to use like a celebrity as an example here. We see celebrities get canceled all the time for things that they posted many, many, many years ago, right? A tweet that they sent, something that they liked online, a comment that they made in an Instagram post, a TikTok video, a YouTube video, whatever, an email even. And this is really heartbreaking to me when we're talking about our students, our young people, because they are being asked to think through every word, every decision at a very young age when they don't even have all the tools to think through it yet. A developing brain actually doesn't have all the skills to think about long-term consequences yet. That's the part of your brain that regulates your emotion, that can examine long-term consequences, that kind of thing, is actually the very last part of your brain to develop. So we're asking our young people to make decisions about what they put out into the world and what will stay in the world for forever before they even can really accurately do that or have the skills to do that. So how do we help with that? Okay, we can talk through, we can role play with our young people. We can say, hey, what could happen if X, Y, Z? Or even if you notice something that could be potentially dangerous that a young person in your life has posted, or harmful, maybe not dangerous, but harmful to them and their future opportunities, you can talk through that with them and help them reason through why that could be potentially an issue. We do see things like colleges will look through all different kinds of social media to decide if that individual who's applied to their school would be a good representation of their school. And if they see something that they don't like, you don't get accepted. We see sports teams and organizational groups and jobs. For sure, employers are obviously looking at our social medias, even young people's social medias. We've seen kids not get into college for things that they posted in middle school. So again, talking through these things, making yourself and your students in your life aware of this. Very important. This brings me to exposure. Okay. Because the internet is such a shared space, as we've discussed, there are a lot of different kinds of content that are out there on the internet for anyone to view, not just adults, not just 18 and up, 21 and up, whatever. People of all ages have access to all kinds of things. And whether that be sexual content, explicit content, content on how to create something that could be harmful to another individual, language that maybe you're not comfortable with, just things that aren't age appropriate can be accessed like that online. So we have to be aware of that. I often hear from people, especially parents, well, what about YouTube Kids? YouTube Kids is a place where it's the only place that I let my kid watch videos online. I say, okay, well, anytime you put that word kids on anything, okay, YouTube Kids, a game for kids, a social media for kids, that's basically directing predators to where all of our young people are hanging out. Okay. So I see a lot of inappropriate exposures to content that is not age appropriate on YouTube Kids in particular. There are tons of predators on YouTube Kids. There's that video game called Roblox. Okay. Roblox is a really popular game for young people, but Roblox, like for preschoolers, elementary schoolers, but Roblox actually has the very most predators on that game out of any other game on the market, because it is targeted for kids. So we have to think about, hey, if I was someone who was trying to harm someone else, trying to harm a child, trying to harm really anybody, how would I utilize these platforms? We kind of have to think a little bit as a predator would, right? Just something to keep in mind is that, many statistics show that a child is exposed to pornographic content for the first time between the ages of 8 and 10 years old. And that just continues to be supported more and more as there is more and more content online. So think about how you want to have those conversations in your families, in your communities. Do you want kids to learn that information from the internet for the first time? Do you want them to ask questions of their peers, of siblings, or would you rather have those meaningful conversations with them? This brings me to impact. We see all kinds of different impact from the internet. We've seen, a rise in things like anxiety, depression, even eating disorders. We've seen a rise in cyber crimes, cyber scams. Most recently, there are several different very, very large technology companies that have been hacked by teenagers, which I think, honestly, we're going to see more and more. And the reason that I think that is because our young people are digital natives. They have grown up from the time they were born with the internet. And as adults, we didn't do that. There wasn't social media like there is now. And I mean, many people didn't even have a computer in their home for a lot of life. And so our young people are coming in at just such an advantage over us. And so I think we're going to see more and more cyber attacks by younger and younger people. We saw a young man who figured out how to track Elon Musk's jet all across the world just from coding, figuring it out. He then started tracking various kinds of military planes, and that was something interesting. So we're seeing a lot of impact of the internet on our society. We're seeing internet impact the way that we relate to each other. We're seeing impact affect the way that people view romantic relationships. And really, that I say all of that just to say that we need to be aware of how this is affecting us. I am not someone who thinks that the internet is all bad. I actually really love technology. I think that there's so much that can be done with technology when it's used safely and when we're aware of the potential threats that there are out there, so that we can put some protective factors in place and try to help mitigate some of that. So let's continue on. I'm actually going to go to this slide because I mentioned quite a few things already. So let's talk about this one. 60% of connected devices do not properly inform on data collection. This is really important when you're thinking about financial data, personal data, data about your children. This is just showing that you may not even be aware of what is being collected about you. Did you know that some apps even collect your keyboard movement? So if, let's say you're on your phone and you're typing a certain way, it collects that information. Why is that? Why would that be? What is the point of that, basically? A lot of these algorithms and companies can make predictions on your age, your gender, your location, even based on that kind of information. Think about it. Maybe a kid does this when they're typing. Maybe we do this. That can give predictions. Okay, there's information collected about, the things that you like on social media, like literally tap like, the things that you search, the things that you linger for more than 2 seconds on, the things that you exit out of. All of that kind of information is being collected. Now, the other thing that you should keep in mind is that your financial information can be stored on some of these apps. So how do you make sure that your information is as safe as possible? First, read those terms and conditions. When you sign up for something new and there's like this big long list of terms and conditions that pops up and you're like, that's a lot of words, I'm not going to read that. Right? So you scroll to the bottom, you press agree, you move on with your life. Read what that says. You can also, for the most part, Google what a lot of these companies are collecting about you and about your kids. Companies should not be collecting a bunch of information about your kids without your agreement. There's a law that says that. So the way that they kind of mitigate this for young people is that they'll say, no one younger than 13 can use our app. Well, how easy is it to fake your age? You just put in a different birthday. It's easy. Okay. Or it will say, if the user is younger than 13, it must say in their bio of their profile that this app is being monitored by their parents. I could, if I was 10, I would know how to type that, right? And then that basically covers them to collect whatever information they want about that user. A couple of things that you can do before you insert your financial information into anything. Let's say you're online shopping. Okay. You want to look up at the search bar or at the URL bar and look to see if there's something that looks like a padlock in that bar. You can click that padlock. When you click that padlock, it will tell you who owns that website, if they've done everything that they are supposed to keep the data secured. And you can then decide, oh, is this actually the website that I think that it is? Something that I see happen a lot, especially as it gets closer to like times of the year where online shopping is very popular, like holiday time, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that kind of thing, is that there will be lots of companies that try to trick you into thinking that you're on the website that you think that you're trying to purchase something from, but it's just one letter off or just one period off or just one thing off. And simply what they're trying to do is gather your information. So what this looked like really at Black Friday time was, I'm going to use Amazon as an example, although I don't necessarily, it's not just Amazon that's being targeted with this kind of information, but for the purposes of this example, I would see people get text messages on their phone to say, thank you so much for your Amazon purchase. We're missing just a bit of information. Click here to confirm your purchase. You click, it looks just like the regular Amazon website that you're used to. And it's asking you to put your credit card information back in, your shipping address back in, that kind of thing. But if you were to click that little padlock on the URL, first of all, there might not be a padlock. That means that it's an unsecure website. But if there is, if you click it, the company that owns that website is not Amazon, some other random company. And that is just somebody trying to get your information and then financially exploit you. Okay, keep that in mind. When we're talking about kids, let's go back to talking about students really fast. 75% of kids 8 to 11 years old cannot distinguish ads from other content. Why is this important? This is important because we see so many young people click on things that are ads and not even realize that it is redirecting them to a different website, that it's asking for personal information and they're no longer in the game that they thought they were in or watching the video that they thought they were in, or even click on an ad that leads them to inappropriate content. Okay, so how do we fix this? We role play with them. We sit with them and we look for an ad, or we wait for an ad to pop up and we say, what is that? And when they click it, we show how it changes them to a different website. We talk about, we can help them say, what would you do if you got a screen that popped up and asked for an update? This is also something that happens a lot. We'll see fake updates come up on devices and kids click them, and really it ends up just being like a virus that gets downloaded onto the device. And so these are important things to remember in creating boundaries and guidelines in your household. Are they allowed to click on something that pops up on their screen? Should they come get you right away to help figure that out? Like, what is the protocol in your house? And there's no one answer for it, but it is something that you really should talk through and figure out what the best system in your household is. I'm going to skip this video just because it's a little bit long and I would rather have more time to talk to you. Okay, so here are the most popular social media platforms for teens. What's interesting is that Facebook across the world ranks as the #1 most favorite platform for adults, but kids don't like Facebook. So I think that it's interesting to see that difference. We saw, especially in the early pandemic time, TikTok really just skyrocket in popularity. And now TikTok is very, very popular. And I think probably when I get the final 2021 numbers, it will have overtaken Snapchat in popularity. A lot of the arguments for issues with TikTok is that it is not an American-owned company. Now, whatever your stance is on that, it doesn't really matter. My issue is just you want to know how these platforms are collecting information about you. Whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever, just know what information is being collected about you and then spend time on these apps. There's a lot of content on TikTok that gets pushed to you. So what that means is that you're not selecting to see that content, and rather they're suggesting content to you. And what I've seen happen is that with, again, kids, adults, teens, anybody, content gets suggested to you that may not be something that you're comfortable seeing, want to see, or had any intention of happening upon. One of my team members actually sent me a video of a highly, highly sexually explicit video that was happening live on TikTok and said, did you know that this kind of content was happening? And I clicked it. And the second I clicked it, because I wanted to know what she was talking about, clicked it, I realized that I made a huge mistake. The second I clicked that, it showed that I wanted to, or to that TikTok algorithms, it showed that I wanted to interact with that content. And so for weeks, the content that was being pushed to my platform was highly, highly explicit. And so what you can do when that happens is you can hold down on the video and it will give you an options to say, I'm not interested in this. But I always think of it from the perspective of a young person. Let's say they click on something that they don't know what it is. Okay, they click on it, they view it. Now TikTok says, ooh, this person's interested in this, and starts pushing more and more and more content to them. Likely they're not going to press I'm not interested. And two, it's going to completely change the overall experience that they're having with that platform. So now they have a very sexually explicit platform that can lead to so many different things. I'm just using sexually explicit as one option. There are, I mean, drug use, bullying, whatever topic you want to replace for the sexually explicit one. That's just kind of what happened to me most recently. Here are some of the trends that I'm seeing a lot on social media. First of all, I'm seeing the promotion of risky behaviors. I see this a lot when it comes to encouraging like challenges to occur. One that we saw sort of recently was the Benadryl challenge, where people would, or really young people were taking as many Benadryl as they could and trying to stay awake. But that can be fatal, and was fatal in places across the nation. And so that is something to keep in mind. I always say just discourage engaging in challenges. I'm thinking way back. And once upon a time, there was this challenge, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, right? You either donate to ALS Foundation for research, or you dump a bucket of ice on yourself and you challenge your friends to also dump a bucket of ice on themselves, basically. It was all fun and games. Actually, a ton of good came from that. There was a lot of money that was raised for research. But what didn't get talked about as much is that people took it too far and ended up dumping ice on top of their infants and creating really dangerous situations, hypothermia of infants. And that's one thing that we thought was going to be good and turned really bad. So as adults, whether you have kids in your life or not, the best thing that we can do is model that we don't engage in that kind of thing, right? There are other fun things that you can do online, because you just never know what's going to be taken one step too far, right? I see a lot of inappropriate pictures taken and sent on social media platforms in general, or online in general. In fact, 1 in 4 students will engage in some kind of sexting before they graduate high school. 1 in 4. That's a huge number. And not only that, the idea of sending inappropriate images, even between adults, has become very common. You know, if you're in a relationship with somebody, you can send images. I've even had conversations with several friends that are like, oh yeah, I'll send my spouse inappropriate pictures, naked pictures on Snapchat because they disappear. But what did we talk about earlier? Those images don't ever disappear. I've actually even had a friend who thought that she sent an inappropriate picture to her significant other that would never be seen again. She ended up getting divorced. That picture got leaked and sent to everyone at her office at work. And she came to work one day and walked into her office, and everyone just kind of like stared at her, and she didn't know what was happening. And her boss called her in and revealed what had happened, that everyone in their office received that picture. And she just didn't know how that even happened, because she thought she sent it on Snapchat. She thought it disappeared. So I'm not saying this to be judgmental in any way. There's no shame here. It's just bringing awareness that when you make that decision to send an image, send a video that's inappropriate of any kind, you no longer have control of where that goes. So you should just think through, are you willing to take that risk? Now, when it comes to young people, there is so much opportunity for victimization, exploitation when an inappropriate picture is sent. Predators in particular, which, by the way, the FBI estimates that there are roughly 500,000 predators online at any given second. A lot of predators are trying to get a young person to send them an inappropriate image to use as blackmail so that they can kind of sort of say, hey, I have this naked picture of you, or I have this partially naked image of you. If you don't do what I want you to do, I will release this to everyone you know. We also see inappropriate pictures of young people sold online, sold to porn sites, that kind of thing. And that can be really damaging for somebody long-term, obviously. Now, of course, there are laws against this. Of course, it is considered child pornography in the state of Texas, and I'm in Texas, but in the state of Texas, there it is considered child pornography to take, send, or have, like, possess any kind of naked picture of a juvenile. And of course, there are very similar laws, just varying slightly across the nation. And we do see plenty of charges for that. Okay, sugar baby culture is something that I'm seeing for people of all ages right now. And that's basically just presenting a mutually beneficial relationship that is platonic, so to say, at first, where someone will reach out to somebody else. Maybe a situation that I see is someone of means will reach out to somebody who may need money for some reason and say, hey, I'm really lonely. Will you just talk to me a few times a week and I'll send you $500 at the end of every week? They agree. They are sent the $500 in real dollars, spendable dollars. And this goes on for a little while. And then oftentimes that sugar daddy, so to say, it's kind of a natural term for it, will try to escalate that situation to make it more and more sexual, again, to get that image, to blackmail. And the way that they do that is they often will offer more money for more risque pictures. Now, we've even seen this pop up on college campuses. There was even a college that in their school paper wrote an article about how to be a good sugar baby. Okay. And the National Center on Sexual Exploitation did a whole piece with some of the girls from that campus about why that is so damaging to them, and why their school paper is encouraging them to engage in this kind of situation. But we see this even amongst adults, right? This isn't just a student thing that's happening. We see the encouragement and promotion of self-harm online. People will say things like, encourage each other to kill themselves, to harm themselves, say, hey, we don't want any, or the world doesn't want you here. All very dangerous. I'm going to provide you with a resource guide, not a terms guide, sorry, a resource guide in the chat at the end of this. It's just a clickable link, and it's about 8 pages that go through a lot of these things that I'm saying, and it includes all these terms. So because of that, I'm going to keep going. I do want to just touch base about emojis really fast. Emojis to a lot of adults are just used to show that our emotions, our expressions, but to young people, they're code for all kinds of different things. Okay, so here are just some of the emojis that my team and I have decoded recently. And what happens a lot of times with emojis is that once the adults figure out what an emoji means to them, the meaning of that emoji will change. So this is what we have most recently, and we have an emoji code that I can also link for you via our resource center. But just something to keep in mind, especially if you're a parent and you're trying to figure out what is even being talked about in text message or direct message. A lot of times it's helpful to look up what an emoji means, and you can Google it. Here are some of our concerning features online. We've talked about disappearing content a bit, but I also want to talk about location services. Many of the apps, websites, games that we use today try to make you believe that they require location services to function. And that is not true. Many of the apps would like to use your location or have features of the app or website that can only be used if location is on, but the core of the app can be used kind of regardless. So with that in mind, it is best to turn off location services for everything except for Find My iPhone or Find My Phone if you have an Android. And the reason I say that is because those two features in particular require a password to be input in order to track the location of a device. So this has actually been helpful in many cases that have come across my desk through the years where maybe a child is missing and law enforcement can use Find My Phone, Find My iPhone, or Find My Android, any of those, to track that student, track that kid, and then go and get them and bring them to safety. We saw this happen with a case here in Houston where a girl went missing, and our law enforcement tracked her all the way to Mexico City, safely got there and got her and brought her back. Had Find My Phone, Find My iPhone been off, that wouldn't have been possible. Now, I encourage turning location services off for everything else, because when location services are on for things that are not password protected, then people who you don't want to know your location, your kid's location, a user's location, can access that. So an example of that is Snapchat has something called Snap Maps, and Snap Maps is a feature of Snapchat where Snapchat partnered with Google to create a map that looks like Google Maps. It looks exactly like Google Maps. But instead of giving you directions from point A to point B, it shows each user's exact location and exactly what they're doing. So if a user has this location service on, it will show them on a little map, and it'll show little Bitmoji, little character that looks like them, and it will show what they're doing. So if they're watching TV, it'll show them in a recliner with a remote. If they're going down the street, it will show them going down the street in a car. If they're sleeping, it will show them in a bed with little like Z's coming out of their head. I personally believe that no one needs to know that about anybody else. Okay. So you can turn that feature off within Snapchat. It's called going into ghost mode. And in the resource guide that I'll provide you a link for, it gives step-by-step instructions on how to do that and which settings to utilize to do that. We want to look at interrelated apps. There are apps that connect one app to the next. So there's this randomized chat called Monkey. And basically what Monkey is it will connect two complete strangers to video chat together for a set amount of time. And so it could be someone from here in Texas and someone from Brazil, or someone from Australia, or someone from wherever. And all it says to the two users before they're connected is the age of the user and the country where they reside. Okay, so first of all, that's concerning to me for many reasons, but also after you're done chatting on Monkey, if you want to stay connected with that person in any way, you would need to connect immediately on a social media platform. So what Monkey does is it prompts you to connect on Snapchat immediately after you're done talking. So Monkey, you're chatting, and then they say, okay, your time's up. If you want to stay connected, connect on Snapchat now. And if you don't click that, you can never find that person again. But if you do click that, then your Snapchat accounts are now linked. Now, if we're thinking about what other features Snapchat has that location service that I was just talking about, Snap Maps. So if you were to connect with a stranger on Monkey, link your Snapchat accounts, now that total stranger knows exactly where you are and exactly what you're doing all the time. These are things that we have to pay attention to. So know what app is connected to another app, which ones are interrelated. Know about parent companies. Facebook is the parent company of Instagram, and a lot of people will be really upset with Facebook for whatever their practices are. And so they'll say, I'm deleting my Facebook, yet they'll still use Instagram. Okay. Instagram has the same practices as Facebook. It's the same company. It's just two different apps. So those are good things to keep in mind. Fake profiles is the number one thing that is concerning to me for people of all ages. We can all be fall victim to being tricked or trapped by a fake profile. What's so hard about the internet is that on the internet, users can pretend to be anybody they want. I could pretend to be a 12-year-old boy if I wanted to, and I can curate a whole internet persona around me being a 12-year-old boy and have pictures, videos, um, language that all supports that profile of me being a young boy. Am I a young boy? No, I am not. I'm not. But it is so easy to create that. We see this happen on dating apps where people will upload someone else's pictures and information and pretend to be that person, and they're not at all. And when they convince someone to meet them in person, they can easily victimize that person. Think about this when anyone is engaging with you online. If you don't already know them in real life, be very, very careful about what kind of engagement you are, or what kind of conversation you're engaging in. Let's talk about vulnerabilities really fast. So vulnerabilities are all kinds of things. Kind of pre-pandemic, these are the three categories that we would say vulnerabilities fall into, but really the pandemic showed us that a vulnerability can be so many different things. One of the biggest vulnerabilities that we saw during the pandemic was simply boredom. We saw predators prey on the fact that everyone was bored, that everyone was stuck at home. Okay. And that's where I saw such a rise in that sugar baby culture that I was talking about. It's where I saw predators really prey on students here. Actually, during the pandemic, we saw a 93% increase in the online solicitation of minors. 93% increase because we were using the internet for work and school and socialization and entertainment, and everything we did was online. And we kind of have stayed that way, right? The fact that we're even doing this virtual conversation right now is different than how we would have done it probably 2.5 years ago, right? So there's all kinds of ways that the online predators can, try to psychologically manipulate another user, but this is kind of the standard grooming process that we've come up with here at Crime Stoppers. And of course, there's lots of variations, but generally what we see is we see a victim targeted. Okay. What is a vulnerability that can be exploited? And you, a child, even like a parent, a grandparent, we see that happen a lot. So targeting somebody. Predator targets somebody, and then they want to befriend them by gaining their trust, chatting with them, engaging with them online, making them feel comfortable and welcome. We see things like secrets being shared amongst users. And a lot of times that will be led by the predator. The predator will reveal a secret, something that they've never told someone before, right? And try to really build rapport with that victim, okay? Then we'll see a need being fulfilled. So whatever that vulnerability is that they targeted or identified in the beginning, they'll begin to fill that. So maybe that is they saw a financial need, and so they start providing financially. Maybe it's an emotional need. They saw that someone needs a friend or a romantic partner or a role model or someone just to talk to. Okay, so they'll start fulfilling that. Then they begin the isolation process. The isolation process is where someone basically tries to convince the victim that everyone that they've had in their life for all of their life doesn't care about them. They're actually terrible in the way that they treat that victim. And the only person that truly cares and is truly a good friend, whatever, to that victim is them, the predator. Then we see capitalization. Capitalization could be in-person capitalization. It could be convincing someone to meet up in person and then victimizing them in some way. It could be financial capitalization. Hey, I'm in a really tough spot. I need some financial help. Could you send me a bit of money? See that happen. It could be blackmail of images, like we talked about earlier. There are lots of different kinds of capitalization that happens here. Here are some of the random chats I was talking about earlier, but I'm gonna go through and get to some resources that are really helpful. Hold on. Here we go. So what do we do about this? How do we help our young people? How do we help ourselves? What can be done? First, I want to talk about monitoring tools that are very helpful if you're trying to create a safe digital space for your kids, for your students in your life. Okay. These are 3 of the monitoring tools that I personally really like, although there are hundreds of monitoring tools out there. So if you found one that works better for you, then that's great. My favorite that I like a lot is Bark. Bark is a company whose mission is really to empower parents to engage with their kids online and create safe digital spaces. I love that they not only have products that you can purchase, but also that they have ongoing resources that they just pump out. They pump out, blog posts about trends that they're seeing. They create new emoji guides all the time. They have YouTube series where you can go and watch videos about different trends or issues or potential dangers online. And then they have a tool that's a downloadable app. And once you download the app and you connect it with other devices, so let's think like your kid's device, it monitors what's happening on that device. And if there's anything of concern that's happening, whether it be potential victimization, suicide ideation, any kind of talk of self-harm or bullying or substance use, anything like that, it will take a screenshot of what's happening on that screen and it will email it to you or text it to you with what the issue is and how you as a parent could bring it up. What are some next steps that could be taken? Which is why I love this app. I think that it's one thing to be told that there's a fire in your house, right? But it's another thing to be told that there's a fire and provided with a fire extinguisher to put it out, right? I think that kind of sets this specific one apart. And a reason that I really like it. The other thing that I like is that it can connect with numerous devices. So you can have it connected to like multiple kids' devices in your household. My recommendation for this though, is that there are 3 settings for how secure, I guess, you want your device to be or the device to be. And so that basically just says how much information that app will send you in either text message or email. And so the 3 levels, I've heard that the highest level will basically be texting you or emailing you every second of every day that there's something of concern on the device. And so really the medium or lowest level are sufficient. That's just kind of what I've heard in my years of doing this. Another one that I like, if you're really looking to test out a free option, is Custodio. Custodio does have a paid version, but it does have a good free option. If you've never used a third-party monitoring tool, you don't really know what that is, I would suggest trying Custodio because it allows you to regulate a lot of things and gives you a lot of insights, even in their free version. So I think it's a good one that you could utilize. A lot of people with very young kids like NetNanny. NetNanny will tell you anything you could possibly want to know about a device, and it will give you a lot of different controls. So you could control, you could set a bedtime for your kid and completely turn their device off at a certain time. Or you could say, I'd like to allow these 3 things to be utilized on the app at a certain time, and these 3 things to not. It'll tell you metrics and analysis and all kinds of stuff. Again, just from my experience doing this for many years, typically by the time parents have kids in upper elementary, middle school, they think that NetNanny is a little excessive, like it gives you too much information and they're not utilizing it. And so that's when they often will prefer to move to Bark or Custodio. Again, there's a lot of different ones. I also really like Life 360 if you're simply looking for a safe, secure location service. that you don't have to like get on your computer and type in find my iPhone. Life 360, you can set a perimeter on a map, and if your child or child's device goes outside of that perimeter, it will notify you. You can also set it to let you know if they're in a car that's speeding, that's going over a certain speed limit, anything like that. I actually have that. I have Life 360 with my mom. My mom lives alone, and so I like to know where she is, and she's still a mom. She still likes to know where I am, so we'll use that. And if for some reason one of us isn't or can't answer, we can quickly see, are they safe at home? That kind of thing. I think my mom and aunt also have this with my grandfather too, to know kind of where he is. Here are a few of our current laws. We have privacy laws that basically say that you cannot take pictures or record somebody in a place where privacy is expected. So like not a bathroom, not a locker room, that kind of thing. Impersonation laws exist across the nation. So really it is illegal to impersonate somebody. And there's child pornography laws across the nation as well. So here are some key reminders. I know we're coming close to the end. First of all, have ongoing conversations about personal safety with everyone in your life. It's important to have ongoing conversations with your community, with your students, with your family, about what personal safety looks like. Take action, research new apps and games. You can utilize a resource called commonsensemedia.org. They have like a search feature where you can type in any game or even TV show or movie or app, and it will give you a rating and kind of their thoughts on how safe it is and kind of what the age of users should be. Again, that's commonsensemedia.org. And then remember that victimization is never the victim's fault, and to keep seeking help until help is given. Okay, I know that was such a mouthful, so let me stop sharing and answer any questions that you guys have in our last few minutes together.
All right, I do have some questions here. Let me go ahead and share my screen so people know we're doing our question and answer portion. Here's a question. What about cell phones? So many kids can get over, like if you have certain things on the network that are supposed to filter out certain content, but they can go ahead and just get on cellular data and get into that.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things that can be done to help mitigate, but there's nothing that you can do to completely ensure that there is 100% safety on devices. So what I mean by that is that in your home network, you can always implement lots of different safety settings. I actually encourage you to go to Protect Young Eyes. It's an organization that we work with, and they have a 4-step plan on things that you can specifically do with your router, with your network, with your devices, anything. But we have to remember that active conversations is the best thing that you can do, because if a kid wants to figure out how to get on an app or a website that you don't want them to get on, they can figure it out. Even if they're not doing it on your devices, on a cell phone that's issued by you, they have friends, they go to school, their friends have devices. So the best thing you can do is talk about what the risks are and really work through those things with them. Have open lines of communication. One of the partners that we have, he is the executive director for an organization called Demand Disruption, and they really try to eliminate the demand for sex trafficking. But something that he always says in all of his presentations is that when his kids were growing up, he would say to them, I can't imagine having access to all the things that you do at your age. And that must be really challenging. And I'm here to support you in any way that I can, because I think if I had access to those things, I would have really destroyed myself. And I don't want you to have to bear this burden alone. And so really showing empathy and listening and talking through those things have been proven to really, really help students make decisions that you would hope that they make.
Thank you for that answer there. So you talked a lot about some of what Crime Stopper does as far as it helping to prevent crime. It seems like a lot of these sort of online crimes are not prosecuted, and there doesn't seem to be a huge enough deterrent for that. Can you talk a little bit about possibly deterring those types of crimes?
Like legally or?
Yes.
Yeah. So, in the past year, we've seen quite a bit of movement in the Senate in particular about regulating some of these platforms. I do think we're getting there. I'm not sure what regulation of these platforms and encouragement for prosecution is going to be. We're seeing that happen actually right now in Europe, which typically in the States, we're just slower to regulate this kind of stuff. But likely these platforms will have to follow some of the regulations that Europe is going to implement. What I can say on a granular level, what we can be doing is that we can be advocating for better regulations and for prosecution. There is a petition that's going around right now that's called Let Parents Protect, and it was created by Dr. Laura Berman. She's from the Oprah channel. Maybe you know who she is, but her son actually purchased a pill, a drug on Snapchat. He was targeted on Snapchat and offered medication that he thought, we think that he thought it was Percocet, but it was laced with a substance called fentanyl, which is lethal. And it was delivered to his house. He bought it for about 15 cents, ingested it, and then died. But the whole petition is about allowing some of these third-party monitoring tools like Bark onto platforms that do not allow them right now. So for example, Snapchat does not allow Bark. And Dr. Berman and many experts in the field feel that if Bark would have been loaded onto Snapchat, it could have notified the parents, hey, there's a potential drug purchase happening right now. And that could have been stepped in. So there is legislation that's following this petition, but it takes a lot of voices. Really, kind of what we've seen in getting legislation even noticed previously is that there needs to be about 100,000 signatures on this kind of thing. And so the more voices, the better. I think we have to fight for not just our children and our family, but our neighbors as well. And so even if you haven't been touched by that kind of thing, if you agree on, hey, we should let parents decide if they want to load this onto their apps or not, sign that petition. I think that also just, squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so keep advocating for that. If your child is victimized, keep going back. A lot of these companies like to say that there's nothing they can do because even if they shut down a profile, a new profile is going to pop up. And I think that answer has to be changed. And I do think that we're getting there. I think that there's so much focus on the need for regulation of platforms right now.
Well, that's all the time we have today. And I just want to say to Sydney, thank you so much for such an information rich and informative webinar. We really appreciate you coming and speaking with us. To our attendees, look for a link to a replay soon with a link to the, like I said, the replay of this event. Here at Advice Chaser, we're all about helping you find a financial advisor who's a great fit for your life and your financial questions. Every one of our advisor partners has agreed to offer free initial consultation to anyone we send them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and clicking on the link to find an advisor. Once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you so much for coming, and we will see you at another webinar very soon. Goodbye, everyone.